Look, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that urban legends about cursed films are just stories bored people make up to get views on the internet. I used to think that too. I used to laugh at people who claimed they felt watched after finishing a movie, or those who insisted that their electronics acted up when they watched certain tapes. But that was before I found the box. I'm not trying to convince you to believe me, but I need to get this off my chest. And honestly, if you're listening to this, maybe it's already too late for you too. It started last Tuesday. My grandfather passed away a few months ago, and my parents finally pressured me into cleaning out the old Victorian house he left behind in the hills. The place is a nightmare, drafty, smells like mothballs and damp wood, and every floorboard screams under your feet. I was up in the attic, pushing aside boxes of dusty books and old tax returns from the 90s, when I hit a loose panel in the floor. I'm talking about a hollow space tucked right under the eaves. Inside wasn't money or gold, just a single, unmarked metal film canister and a handwritten note tucked into a yellowing envelope. The note was dated June 14, 1984. It just said, "Do not develop. Do not watch. Burn the negative, or it will find a way to finish the film." Naturally, I did the opposite of what the note said. I think we all would, right? There's a specific kind of curiosity that feels like an itch behind your eyes. I took the canister to this niche film restoration shop downtown. The guy behind the counter looked at the canister like it was a live grenade. He told me it was 16 millimeters celluloid and warned me that the emulsion looked unstable. I paid him extra to digitize it, telling myself it was just some creepy home movie my grandpa had hidden away. When I got the file back, I sat down on my couch at 2 a.m., poured a drink, and hit play. The video starts with static. Not the digital kind you get from a broken HDMI cable. The silence in my room after that third click was heavier than the dark. You know that feeling when you're sure you're alone, but your skin is crawling anyway? That was my reality, amplified by the fact that I had just watched a monster manifest in my own home on a digital file that shouldn't exist. I sat there, my breath hitching in my throat, staring at the closed bedroom door. The handle didn't move. There was no shadow stretching beneath the frame. But the sound, that rhythmic, metallic tap tap tap, kept playing in my head, a phantom echo of what I'd just seen on the monitor. I forced myself to look back at the screen. The video had looped. The creature was back at the foot of the bed, leaning over my sleeping form, that featureless face pulsing like a bruised lung. I reached out with a trembling hand, my fingers hovering over the mouse. I wanted to close the tab, delete the file, throw the laptop out the window, and sprint to my car. But I couldn't. It was like I was anchored to the chair. Every fiber of my being told me that if I closed that video, the action would shift from the screen to my physical space. I had to know what happened next. I had to see if the creature left, or if it stayed until the sun came up. I hit the spacebar to unpause the video. The creature on the screen remained motionless for what felt like an eternity. Then, it began to change. The pale, smooth skin started to crack, not like dry mud, but like wet clay drying too fast. Deep, jagged fissures opened up across its chest, and from within those cracks, a sound began to bleed out. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a growl. It was the sound of 1,000 people whispering at once, all of them saying my name. Leo, Leo, Leo. My blood turned to ice. My name isn't common. It wasn't some generic John Doe ghost story. This thing knew me. I stood up, finally breaking the paralysis, and backed away until my spine hit the closet door. I grabbed my phone, intending to call someone, anyone. The closet door didn't just swing open. It buckled inward, as if something on the other side was pulling the atmosphere out of the room. I didn't wait for it to finish. I bolted. I didn't even look back to see what was emerging from that darkness, but I could hear it. A wet, tearing sound, like wet paper being ripped apart over and over again. I sprinted down the hallway of my grandfather's house, my bare feet slapping against the cold, uneven floorboards. The house felt different, stretched. The hallway, which I knew was only 20 feet long, seemed to go on for miles. The doors I passed, the guest room, the bathroom, all seemed to be vibrating, their frames warping like they were caught in the heat haze of a desert road. I reached the staircase and threw myself down it, tumbling over the last few steps and crashing into the foyer. My only thought was to get out the front door. I clawed at the deadbolt, my fingers slick with sweat, but the lock wouldn't budge. It wasn't stuck. It felt like the metal had fused to the frame. I looked at the glass sidelight next to the door, intending to smash it and crawl out, but when I peered through the glass, I didn't see the front lawn or the driveway. I saw the attic. I was looking down into the attic from the front door. I could see the very spot where I had found the canister, the floorboards still torn up, the dusty boxes scattered. I looked back behind me, toward the stairs I had just descended, and saw the upstairs hallway leading directly into the back of the foyer. The house wasn't a house anymore. It was a non-Euclidean loop, a physical manifestation of the cursed film's editing. Everything was out of sync. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then, I heard it again, that whisper. Not from the closet this time, but from the walls themselves. The cut needs a lead. The walls began to bleed. Not blood, ink. The same thick, black fluid from the laptop screen began to ess. I wasn't falling anymore. I was suspended in a void of static, a place where time didn't flow like a river, but sat in still, frozen pockets. It was like being inside a grain of film, pressed between the acetate and the chemical layer. Below me, if below even existed here, I could see the house, but it looked like a model, tiny and fragile, flickering in and out of existence as if someone were messing with the lighting rig. The creature, the director, as I'd started calling it in my mind, hovered nearby. It wasn't just a monster, it was an editor. It moved with a jerky, stop-motion cadence, its limbs snapping into different positions as it shifted through the dimensions of the room. Every time it moved, the scenery around me jumped. 1 second I was back in the kitchen. The next, I was suspended in the attic. Then, I was standing in the doorway of the bedroom, watching the scene from the very first video all over again. Don't you see? The voice resonated, not in my ears, but directly into the marrow of my bones. Stories require a narrative arc. A beginning, a middle, and a conclusion. You were the missing piece, Leo. The archival footage was empty until you played it. I tried to scream, but the air here was thin, like trying to breathe through a heavy wool blanket. I clawed at the space in front of me, and my fingernails caught on something solid. It felt like paper. I ripped at it, tearing through a layer of what felt like dried, brittle film, and suddenly, I tumbled back into the living room of the house. I was gasping for air, the smell of dust and ozone thick in my lungs. But I wasn't alone. The room was filled with shadows, hundreds of them. They were draped over the furniture, standing in the corners, huddled in the hallway. I squinted, my eyes adjusting to the dim, flicking light of the house. They weren't just shadows. They were people. Faded, monochromatic, translucent people. I could see the grain of the film running through their faces. They blew. The lighter flickered in my shaking hand, a tiny, defiant orange spark against the oppressive, monochromatic gray of the set. The director shrieked, a sound like 1,000 needles scratching against a chalkboard, and the house shuddered violently. The floorboards beneath me rippled like water, and the walls began to peel back, revealing not wood and insulation, but layer upon layer of rotting film strip, curled and brittle. I realized then that the director wasn't just controlling the film, it was the film. It was made of the very negative I had been so foolish to digitize. Cut. Cut. That's not in the script. The voice boomed, glitching between a dozen different pitches. The unseen threads tugging at my limbs snapped one by one, leaving me stumbling, gasping for breath as I regained control of my body. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just lunged. I dove toward the center of the room, where the air was thickest with that black, ink-like fluid, and slammed the lighter into the nearest patch of wall. The celluloid caught instantly. It didn't burn like wood. It flashed, a bright, violent blue fire that raced up the walls with impossible speed. The smell was horrific, burning chemicals, melting plastic, and something organic, like old, dusty skin. The house began to scream. It wasn't a metaphor. The structure itself let out a high-pitched, harmonic wail as the fire consumed the frames. The deleted scenes, the ghosts of those who had come before, began to dissipate, their translucent bodies dissolving into ash. They looked at me as they faded, not with anger, but with a strange, hollow gratitude. The director collapsed. It folded in on itself, its lens eyes shattering one by one, clicking and popping as the heat warped the glass. It tried to reach for me, its elongated fingers turning into strips of charred film, but it was too busy trying to put itself out. It was desperately trying to edit the fire out of the scene, frantically waving its hands as if hitting. Thanks for watching my video. Like my video and subscribe.